Hello. How you doing, Nick?
I mean, I'm doing well, thanks. You've beaten me to the punch, Jack. Because my mic would not let me respond. But it's a good day always when I'm talking tennis with you. And it's been an interesting week, right?
Yeah, it has been an interesting week, yeah. I'm quite excited to talk about it. Some pretty interesting storylines, some stuff that was pretty surprising, other stuff that maybe was less surprising. Maybe that'll be the talking point. What is the surprising stuff? What did you find surprising, Nick? What did I find surprising? There's some stuff that I was like, that's not a surprise to me. And other people probably did find it surprising. So anyway, yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't think there's many surprises in terms of maybe the capability of players, but maybe the stories are from the week players finding form again, such as the winner of Tokyo, which obviously took place this morning our time. But that was Veronika Kudermetova winning her second career WTA 500 title, beating Jessica Pegula in the final, having disposed of Iga Swiatek in the quarters and Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova in the semis. Kudermetova, after having some good results up until Berlin, and I think an injury may have derailed things a little bit for her, and she lost quite a lot of form, suddenly burst back onto the scene, and she's got quite a decent top 10 record from this year now.
Actually, I've not even seen the record. Actually, Nick, do you care to talk
I saw some
about the
tweets
wins?
about it. I think she's kind of like, I don't remember the numbers, but I remember seeing it's pretty much a 50-50 ratio.
Really? Jesus. Maybe she's got a better record against the top 10 than she does against any of the other members of the WTA ranked players. Because honestly, her year's been pretty up and down. There's been so many losses that have just made people think, I mean, what's going on with her? Is there something wrong with her? Like, what's happening? I'm actually going to look it up now because I am intrigued next second. See, 6-3 against the top 10 this year. That's an amazing record, of course.
I think maybe I've seen an all-time figure or something, but
and then
yes.
higher ranked than 10. She's got a worse winning percentage. So there you go. She's actually losing more matches to non-top 10 ranked players this year.
I do think, if I remember correctly, Berlin, there was an injury after she played Sabalenka, which had caused her to withdraw against Alexandrova. And yeah, from there on, she just wasn't herself until suddenly this week. She's run to a second 500 title, which is pretty impressive. You can say very few players have got multiple of those, even if it is her best result of her career. So she's beat Sabalenka and Swiatek this year as well.
Yeah. Do you know what I've got in my head though? So even actually looking at Kudermetova's year, it's not been terrible. It's like semis in Madrid, semis in Rome.
Great clay court season, decent start to the grass season.
Yeah, and obviously she got the title this week. She got the final in Herzogenbosch. Pardon my German, my Dutch. Oh my God! Well, you get the idea. You know what I mean. Point is, the reason I had this kind of feeling in my head that she didn't have a good year is because her slam record has been atrocious. I mean, she's won 1, 2, 3 matches in slams this year. Going out in the second round or the first round, every event. Every time there's been a big pressure match, it feels like she's not really delivered. I don't think that's unfair to say. Just thinking about those matches, it does feel like she's kind of come up a bit short. Even like the Rome semi-final when she was having a good run on clay, Kalinina got off a little lightly there. It didn't feel like Kudermetova totally showed up to the party, a little bit ropey from the back of the court. That's always the feeling I get with her, actually, when she's not on form. It doesn't feel like she's that solid, to be honest. So to see her this week in Tokyo, kind of totally ripping those expectations to shreds, I was pretty surprised. Maybe it helps that it's that hot, I guess, Nick. Maybe, the serve, she has got a good serve, genuinely. And it's a little quicker. The court's sort of high bouncing. That certainly probably helped her serve +1 percentages and stuff. But overall, honestly, just seeing how sort of composed she was from the back compared to the US Open when she lost to Pera, big turnaround. But Nick, I don't know how excited I would get for her career.
Oh, look, we know, like, Kudermetova is a solid top 20 player, has been for a couple of years. I think she broke top 10 briefly, or came very darn close.
No, she did. She did. She was top 10 at the start of the year.
Last year. So she's, she is up there. So she is one of those players who's like super consistent. Or at least we'll get some good results throughout the year. Usually when she's on is really good. As you say, maybe when she's not on, she struggles with her a B game a little bit. I mean, actually, what you were saying about her year, it kind of reminds me of Sakkari's year in many ways, given that very similarly, Sakkari performing in sort of anywhere except the slams, apparently.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
The key difference here being it's a 500 rather than a 1,000.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. It feels like every time Sakkari's really had to step up, she's kind of come up short, and then they've had the odd result that's actually, they could be pretty happy with, but it's not what they're ultimately aiming to achieve. So I don't really think much has changed in the Kudermetova landscape, really. Despite the fact that this has been it's a very good title run, it was a very strong field, and obviously the win against Iga is always a win against Iga, even if actually we'll talk about that in a second. It's still a good win against Iga, and the win against Pegula particularly. Jess had been on such a run; she barely was dropping games in her matches, and then this was actually a really good performance. I was very, very impressed. She barely dropped any points on serve. Super tidy. So. Nonetheless, Nick, my point is I just don't think much changes. That's all.
Yeah, but maybe she got a bit of a boost from that Iga win. Actually, like I said, a win against Iga is a win against Iga, and however she got it, and that probably gave her a lot of confidence. I mean, obviously she outlasted Pavlyuchenkova, and then looks like she kind of gritted out and took control of the final against Pegula.
Yeah,
really, which is Pegula's a hard player to do that against if she's on.
Yeah, absolutely. Pegula's been having an amazing year, and the peaks have been so high. And actually, there's not been many lows. So I thought that was going to be a win for sure for Pegula. So it was a very impressive win.
Yeah, I thought she was on for it. I thought she was going to be having on for a very good Asian swing. Hopefully, this result doesn't knock Pegula back too much. Really, which it shouldn't do. She's usually really consistent. She bounces back pretty solidly. I mean, look at that Wimbledon loss that she had against Vondrousova could have crushed her, and she bounced straight back and won Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's very resilient. She's going to be a contender in Beijing for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. At least the sort of smaller tier tournaments, definitely, right up there as one of the favourites. The win against Iga, what did you think about that, Nick, in terms of Iga's side of the story, I guess?
Okay, I didn't watch the match. I still haven't watched the match. I kind of got all I need to know from seeing the statistic of 50 unforced errors.
Yeah.
Which that was just a bad day at the office for Swiatek. I think from talking to a few people, it seemed like she stabilized it in the second set and then had one bad game in the third and couldn't quite get back into it. From that point, it was a disastrous first set, right at the ship, and then one bad game kind of caused it to spiral, which I think there was another loss that was fairly similar to that early in the year. It might have been the Wimbledon, actually.
Pretty sure it was at Wimbledon. She lost to... No, it's not coming back to me. Who was it? Remind me.
Svitolina.
Svitolina. So it was. Yeah, it was Svitolina.
Because that was not a good first set from Iga, and then she kind of scrapped it back, and then just didn't have enough in the third to stop the Svitolina momentum. And Svitolina played very, very well on that day. And hey, Kudermetova clearly played well as well. But it was a bad day at the office. But I kind of saw it coming after the win against Misaki Doi for Iga. Like, she clearly wasn't comfortable. There were definitely some lapses. And I was wondering whether going into this, how well she'd perform on the Asian courts given how fast they are. And I'm wondering if the court speed had a lot to do with it. That would be, and maybe humid conditions don't favor her. So, but yeah, there seems to be a pattern at the minute where she's running into someone of maybe she's experimenting a little bit. I don't know. So
maybe it would be the right time to do it, Nick. It's like the end of the year, rejig a few things, maybe take some time off even. She's probably been hearing to the umpteenth degree that she needs to fix her serve. So I'm sure she is working on that, but it's just so hard when you're actually day in, day out on the tour, having to actually play players over and over again. And I mean, every loss she's had recently, that's generally been the problem. Not able to win any free points off the serve, then the first serve starts to get attacked. If your first serve starts to get attacked, you've got some spot serving issues for sure. Problems flattening out. Again, I don't think we've learned anything new. I do just think I would confirm that maybe Iga is getting found out a little bit. That was the case before this week. I do think that's fine. That's just Iga. She always knew she would have to come up with something new eventually, and that's why she's been working on her serve, etc., etc. But she's not quite there. I honestly don't even think she's like. Well, that's not anything crazy, Nick, but she's not like top 2 power rankings, right? Would you agree with that? Is that a little bit mental?
Beijing?
For the entire tour. See, you're reluctant, but I'm backing that. I am backing that,
yeah.
I think.
I wouldn't put a top 2 for Beijing. Not on form right now. For entire tour, I think she gets she gets the wins under her belt to make me think that she can get the momentum back. I need to say thanks to Jean for correcting me on the player that she struggled with, which is on Hontama, not Doi. I got the wrong Japanese player. Yeah, that was. I think that it's a bad patch. It's kind of reminding me of that kind of Wimbledon to Cincinnati 22 period that she had, where there was a little bit of a lull, like that Hontama match, very similar in many ways to the Kakoffa match that she had at Wimbledon that year, where she was taken to 3 sets by someone who had no business taking her to 3 sets. Hontama sort of, don't want to discredit her, but she's not a player that I would have expected Iga to end up getting broken 5 times by. And I just think maybe it's just a season where she's not uncomfortable. I think a break is needed. She's going to try and go for the WTA finals, but I think she's hit a bad patch. Seems to be it happens for a lot of players, and I think she'll be back. So in terms of your kind of, I'd say you took terms of power rankings. If you're asking me to predict Iga to win titles right here, right now, no. Do I think she'll be back winning titles in 2024? Yes.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Exactly the same thing. I agree. Like, so she'll come back, and honestly, she's one of those players that's base level is still pretty high. It's starting to get a little bit rockier though. I don't know. It's starting to get 50 unforced errors is not a stat you'd see ever in the Iga Swiatek, match history.
She's always had a history of overhitting when stressed. 2021 Iga did that a lot, I found. She did it a little bit. There were a couple of matches in 2022 where that happened. But yeah, I still think it shouldn't detract from. She's gone from having an incredible season to a good season.
And that's definitely fair.
Sometimes that drop, like I need to check. I think the last time I checked, her win percentage on tour was still in the mid 80s, which is ridiculous.
I wonder what her win percentage is off of clay though.
Off of clay, good point. But then she didn't have a great clay season this year.
Well, she won the French, but
she won the French, but she didn't win anything. She won Stuttgart.
I know. No, I think she did. I mean, she got to the final in Madrid, and she pulled out.
It's not like, again, a 2022 clay season where she was unbeaten on the surface.
Yeah. I need to find out now, because I do want to know. I do feel as though Iga's hardcourt record. This is what I'm saying about her getting found out. People are starting to rush her. They just go beg off of the first ball. There's just no need to.
She's 84% for the year at the minute.
And then on hardcourt, she's not bad, Nick, to be fair. She's not bad.
Hard, I think she's more vulnerable on hard to compare to clay, but like you said the same thing about Rafa, right? So he was still pretty, like, you could say that he got found out on hard by Djokovic or someone like that, but he still won the vast majority of those ones.
She is actually 80% on hard. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, I think people underrate match wins, to be honest, and just getting the grind of day in, day out. It's why people underestimate Pegula so much.
Yeah.
She's someone who, she'll win matches against pretty much anyone until she's playing someone who's having a great day or she's not quite on her game. So yeah, I don't think anyone should be raising alarm bells for either player right now.
Yeah.
And I've never, Kudermetova is a player who we've talked about before, has her limits, but is also one of those. She's a legitimate top 20 player, broke into the top 10 on merit, and has some, I would say anyone who can win 5 matches in a row at 500 level or above is a player that should be taken seriously at any tournament.
I mean, yeah, she beat good players this week. Like, she seriously did. Iga, Pegula, and Pavlyuchenkova, who was on a big power hitting run of form. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I do agree. So although I'm playing her down her chances, and I feel like nothing's changed. She does have that peak. That peak exists. Unlikely to happen for 7 matches in a row. I don't think we've had much evidence of that, but it does exist. So she's one of those players you can't totally count out.
Yeah, completely agree with that. What else happened? What else happened in Tokyo? And obviously, Pavlyuchenkova for making the semis. Great result for her. Coming back to the tour, she's another one of those good WTA comeback stories. She's going to be dangerous for a bit.
Yeah, for sure. It was this week that it was the performance by drama, wasn't it? Was it not?
Yes.
Yeah. We can talk about that.
I talked about that with Miles a little bit last week. I'm not against them, to be honest. I think it's worth trying out. It's not like the players who got the performance buys didn't necessarily win the tournaments. And I've seen some people saying, "Oh, just schedule them later," but they're in different parts of the draw. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because then you have to kind of correct the draw. So, I'm okay with the idea of performance buys. If it gets people kind of playing week in, week out on sort of like a more Grand Prix style tour, give it a go.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the concept of them. I just feel they're kind of a little unfair. I know why Rybakina was, angry in principle, but I do also know, as everybody pointed out, she's been aware of this for a very, very long time. And she, it's not like it was a surprise. It's not just been sprung upon her. But the actual logic of it kind of doesn't ring true with me. I do feel like if you're number 3 in the world, you deserve that number 3 in the world bye, regardless of whether or not you've played a tournament before. And all this does, it doesn't just encourage just playing more tournaments, but it does a wee bit, and it's not really something we need to see in the tour, right? We probably need to see a lessening of the calendar rather than a stacking of the calendar. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I'm not as for it as other people, but I'm not totally against it either.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's basically something like when they suggested, said no issue with trying it. Basically, if they try it and the players hate it and it doesn't actually work, it doesn't actually provide much of a benefit to the players who are flying across, then they won't do it. It doesn't seem to be interfering too much with the results of draws yet. Obviously, let's see how Beijing goes, but I'm not expecting it to be honest, any more than any other bye.
Yeah. Sakkari snuck another semi, by the way. I don't know if that's a talking point, but it's just like straight off the title immediately. I was quite impressed with that.
And another win over Garcia as well. She's kind of turning that rivalry around.
Yes, of course, yeah. Although Garcia, obviously, I'm sure most people will be aware of that in chat, but her season actually hasn't been great. Whereas Kudermetova, I was like, it's not been that good. And then you look at the results, and actually she's got a lot of wins. Garcia is seriously struggling for wins. It's been
she's very much on a one or two wins, and then she goes out type.
Exactly.
It's not Muguruza levels of bad,
Yeah.
In terms of losing streaks and whatnot, but
well, she obviously had that semi, didn't she? Was it a semi she played Sakura?
Yeah, Guadalajara.
Yeah. Which is a big result, but other than that, it's basically been the only result the entire year. So
yeah, I think she it kind of all felt. Didn't she get to the final in Lyon or something, and then she lost to Parks?
yeah, she did.
Which that makes me sound like I'm dissing Parks. Parks is a very, very good indoor player, and she was having a pretty good few months. And having watched her live, her serve is scary. But so if it was firing, then yeah, very few people will have a chance. It just doesn't happen very often. So,
John with the stats there, by the way. Garcia with only one top 31 the whole season. That is bad. That's not good. So fair enough. Yeah, she's lost a lot of confidence. Definitely a confidence player, obviously. A lot of feel, a lot of just have to get up there, be confident, take the return, literally from like an inch away from the service line. Yes, it's pretty tough. So hopefully she's fun to watch when she is on. So hopefully she finds a bit of form.
I would love to see Garcia playing well again, but going back to Sakkari, this week kind of underlines what I was thinking before, which is Sakkari's problem might be more to do with her opponents than to do with herself, because she won Guadalajara and she did a really, really good job, and she was the best player all week, and she beat some good players. But she is having trouble beating the very best players and has been showing that in the last sort of year and a half. And that result against Pegula kind of highlighted that, where and it's been the same since. She's had a good. She'll have a really good tournament. She'll go deep, semi-final, final. She'll run into a Swiatek or a Sabalenka or a Pegula or a Goff, and then she just doesn't have an answer. It just kind of highlights that Sakkari is a very, very good player, sort of Rublev-esque, but hasn't demonstrated a consistent ability to challenge at the top. She can, but usually that's where her ceiling is.
Yeah. Although I know we're kind of going back to stuff from last week a wee bit, but I do feel like Guadalajara genuinely might actually start to change things a little.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I thought Pegula played a good match this week. I don't think Sakkari was nervy, particularly. But as much as usual, I'm sure there'll still be some nerves. I think things will change subtly, not explicitly. I just think there'll be the odd semi-final where she's just a little bit more confident than she used to be. I don't think she's just going to win every title now, or win every semi-final, I guess she plays. But I do think the record's going to start to even out a little bit. I would say that.
I'm here for that. Yeah. I'm here for that. I would love to see that. And I would be supportive of Sakkari doing that. As I said, as you said, she didn't play badly in that semi-final against Pegula. It's just Pegula was the better player and arguably seemed to execute that kind of game style a little bit better. But Pegula was having a good week, so you've got to take that into account as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is there anything from Tokyo you wanted to touch on before we talk about Ningbo?
Nothing else comes to mind. Nope. I would go straight on to Ningbo.
Ningbo, right. Well, the headline from Ningbo is suddenly Ons Jabeur has got her season back on track with a title, having had a little bit of a patchy season after sort of the US hardcourt swing, where I think she dealt with an injury issue. But suddenly takes a wild card and storms to a 250 title in Ningbo, and it now has titles on all three surfaces.
Wow, I didn't realize that actually. I didn't. Yeah. I should have. I would have guessed that actually. If you'd asked me if she'd won a title on hardcourts, I would have said no, probably. My thing with Jabeur, I'm sorry if you've heard this stick before, Nick, but my thing with Jabeur is I always felt like on a hard court, she was so out of her element. So often, she wouldn't be able to play the game she wanted to play, just given the surface is so true. So if you slice right, you don't get all these funny, funky bounces. You just get a pretty predictable kind of lowish bounce, but it's attackable. She can't play all that kind of touchy-feely, finessey stuff. And so often that was just evening the playing field against really good players who could hit the ball bigger than Jabeur. She's got the flattest forehand ever. It's just so like she literally just slaps it into the court, which is why when she's under pressure, so often you see that forehand going a bit loose. With all that said, though, this year was a week even was a very, very tidy set of matches. One that has seriously got me hyped for Jabeur, actually. And because everything I've just said there would point to me not believing she could win 5 matches in a row on hard courts, which is true. So I'm going to have to eat my words. I know the US Open happened, but honestly, I thought that was one of the scrappiest runs to a final I've ever seen. And credit to Jabeur, she kind of got through just by pressure, dealing alone. Basically, she dealt with pressure so much better than all of her opponents. But this week was like she was solid. She was using her serve well. She just looked like a really polished top 10 player, which I don't see that often about Jabeur on a hard court. So I was very happy with the performance. Like
she really showed her mettle. I only saw the final, but that was vintage Jabeur, that performance, because everything was just firing in that match. She didn't really put a foot wrong. Schneider did a good job of trying to press, but like if your opponent's playing like the way Jabeur was playing, there's not a lot you can do. And for Jabeur to pull off that kind of performance on a hard court, as you say, she doesn't get the funny bounces that kind of benefit her in the same way. Yeah, that's pretty good, and she's got. It's going to be nice to get her confidence back, considering she's been under a little bit of pressure to qualify for the WTA finals.
Yeah, how much does the WTA finals qualification play into players' heads, though? I suppose, Nick. I don't know.
Only they can tell us that, and I'm not entirely sure they tell us the truth.
Yeah, I'm sure they tell us the truth. I don't think they're that fussed about that. They take every match one at a time. It's not really an issue. You also, if you're winning a 250, how much of a dent is that going to make to your chances of reaching the WTA finals? It's not massive. I don't know. I don't know if she'll be too worried about that. I do think she's just worried about gaining form. Putting Wimbledon behind her, really picking herself up, trying to find a kind of new lease of life on the tennis court, enjoying her tennis as we potted at the US Open. But she was quite injured at the US Open, actually, in fairness to her. So that was maybe a little bit of a...
she should not have got as far as she did at the US Open.
Yeah. There was stuff going on under the surface there, so that was a little bit of an exceptional circumstance. But she still... Yeah, Nick, the point still stands. After Wimbledon, she 100% wants to find some way to kind of gain a little bit of confidence again, and this was pretty massive.
And that's going to do a lot for her in Beijing as well. Do want to talk about Dana Schneider, obviously making her first WTA final. Obviously, she has made a big impression on people this year. I think, was it this year she beat Sakkari in Australia? Was it Sakkari she beat? She got a big win in Australia. And
she came close to beating Sakkari. I don't think she quite beat her, but I do know the match you mean.
Yeah, people on people's radars. Oh, she's good. And Schneider had a good week, and she beat Kvitova in 3 in the quarters, demolished Kvitova in the semis. Looked like she wasn't afraid of Jabeur. She was trying things. I think Schneider's maybe starting to show a little bit of that us talking about her after that Sakkari match isn't overhyped.
Yeah. My lasting impression of Schneider. I'm not sure either, Nick. We'll have to go on the WTA website to check, obviously.
While you're there, can you check how to pronounce the loser of the Guadalajara final for me?
I'm not sure I can promise you that, Nick. It's not the lasting impression I've got. This is more anecdotal. Sorry, this might not be interesting, but she went out to Anna Brogan in Wimbledon qualifying, who is a good friend of mine from our tennis club at New Orleans. So there you go. So Schneider's just proven that Anna's got game, basically, I guess, rather than neither of them having game, of course. No, Schneider is like a class player, loads and loads of latent power, very tough to to stifle one of those players that Jabeur, would be looking to disrupt. Did a really good job of it. Didn't get too overawed or anything. As you say, actually, Schneider did a good job of trying to then change stuff up. She didn't just keep imploding. But yeah, quite exciting to see what she'll be able to do. Definitely one of those players who's just got kind of raw power. We'll see how far she can take that. There's a lot of players like that can't put it together week in, week out, right? That are coming up, I would say. Nick.
Who would you say is the player or are players who have been the ones who best managed having raw power? Because we've seen so many examples on the WTA tour of people who have it, and when it comes together, it's brilliant. And then the rest of the time, it's just not consistent. I think I've got one name in my mind I can think of that's really only manifested this year.
Okay. Like up and comer. Sorry.
No. Like someone who has raw power who's been able to properly harness it.
Well, probably I would have said Rebecca, but who are you thinking of?
Sabalenka.
Well, one or the other, yeah, exactly.
Both of them,
But then also the US Open came to mind as soon as I thought of Sabalenka. I was like, that's the opposite of harnessing your power, I guess. It was a little loose. But no, you're totally right. I mean, Sabalenka, Rebecca are the two players I think of every time. It's a little easier when you're pretty tall, though, to be fair. Those players that have latent power that are a bit smaller and, kind of able to pack a punch despite their size are probably more interesting. Schneider's not that tall. So that's, quite a good example of that. And neither is Kudermetova, actually. She's a really good example of that this week. She's like 5'8", and her serve's a proper bomb at times. It's really, really good. So, no, I think Schneider's going to have potential for good movement along with good power. And sometimes that can be, an amazing combo. I'd like to know what height Noskova is, because I feel like Noskova's like power peak is like really, really exciting, but maybe she struggles to move around the court. I don't know. I've not watched quite enough of her matches yet, but I know
Noskova's 5'10".
That's quite tall. That's quite tall. Yeah. So that's a little harder to get around the court, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I watched her play Ostapenko in Birmingham live, so you can imagine the kind of power on display from both. I mean, it was one of my favorite matches to watch live. It was just bonkers, and I think Ostapenko found it a little bit frustrating. Oh, and they play each other tomorrow.
There you go. That'll be exciting. Cool.
Which is interesting. Which we can bring us to Beijing, which is already underway. We've pretty much covered the first round's pretty much done.
I'm gonna have to get the draw up here, Nick. Hold on.
I've got the draw up. First round's pretty much done. Few interesting moments already. Okay, we haven't got all the first rounds done. So Zhang Qinwen is playing Elena Rybakina in round one. That's a blockbuster. That's still yet to be played. And then, actually, a lot of the second half, there's section 3 of the draw.
How has that happened? Is this just like a mental set of seeds? Is it just like the top?
It's just a mental set of seeds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jesus, that's pretty unlucky.
it's 16 seeds at 1,000, and Zhang Qinwen is just outside the top 16. I think she's just dropped. She's either just in or just out of the top 20.
This is also I really hadn't thought about performance buys affecting lower ranked players. It was just coincidence that Zachary and Garcia got their performance buys for the previous tournament at 4 and 5 in the world. I'm seeing, of course, Kudermetova with a performance buy seeded 16th, and then somebody like Coco Gauff seeded 3rd has to play Alexandrova in the first round. So I do kind of, this is where the injustice starts to really kind of rear its head. I feel like that's pretty harsh, honestly. And Iga as well played well. Sorribes horrible, but
So it depends which Sorribes Thomas shows up, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends what Iga turns up. I think Sorribes Thomas will give you the same ball every day of the week, basically. But
which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for Iga to have some consistent ball pace.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm looking at this. Other first round matches still to play. Kruger against Jabeur, who didn't get a performance buy despite winning Ningbo.
Why?
Because clearly Tokyo is more important.
This is interesting. So what's the point in a performance buy if you don't give it to people who win tournaments?
Clearly, obviously Ningbo, I don't know geographically how far Ningbo is from Beijing. But obviously Tokyo, you have to get on a plane, change countries. But I think it is genuinely the 500, 250 difference.
That's no, I'm not. Don't. I'm not liking that. I'm not sure about that, Nick. This is gonna become a can of worms that I'll open up in a few weeks or something. I need to have a bit of time to process this, the ins and outs. It's a bit harsh.
Jack, we're live. You need to process this now.
Well, my gut reaction is it's unjust, injustice. It's unjust, Nick. I'm not feeling it. I don't like the sound of it at all. I'm just seeing the fact that Kudermetova skipped the queue, and well, even Pavlyuchenkova, in fact, unseeded Pavlyuchenkova.
Yeah.
That makes way more sense. Yeah, and she's playing Andreeva, of course, as we're seeing in the chat.
Krejcikova pretty comfortably.
Yeah, 6-2, 6-2.
Is she suddenly Krejcikova's kryptonite? What is it about Andreeva's game that Krejcikova doesn't like? Or does she keep getting Krejcikova on a bad day?
I'd be tempted to go with the latter. I think Krejcikova even at our best is scary good, right? But I don't think we've seen her at her best for this year almost. I can't remember the last good results she had. She won Dubai.
Dubai was really good. Yeah, that was this year.
Yeah. But then that was like after that, the
San Diego was a good win.
Four rumors kind of. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, I'm completely forgetting about San Diego. But that was like totally out of nowhere. It was like, what happened? And then just kind of went away again. Maybe. I mean, if you're losing 2-2 to anybody, it's pretty convincing.
I mean, let's face it. Let's see how Andreeva's career works out. That might end up being a good result in about 10 years. You never know.
Sure.
But still, losing to a 16-year-old is not great. And Andreeva Pavlyuchenkova might be interesting because I think they know each other quite well, at least judging by Kasatkina blog.
Kasatkina blog. I need to keep up with that.
Yeah. She hasn't done one since US Open, but I found it a much more engaging behind-the-scenes look at tennis than Breakpoint pulled off.
Yeah, fair. I mean, not too difficult. I could give you a more engaging look at tennis just sitting here now.
We should have a camera on you with you sat in Liam Brody's box at Wimbledon. That'll just done the trick.
Yeah. There was some good shots there. I think that 100%. Like, a few of the other results as well. Actually, I'm seeing that Sabalenka was able to get a revenge over Kenin. Although I still think that Kenin win wasn't that huge. Like I actually rate Kenin's year. I think she's had some really good wins, but I don't rate that win. I think Sabalenka was absolutely knackered in Rome when she lost like straight sets to Kenin. Nonetheless, for all the people who've been like talking about it, like, oh my God, Kenin beat the world number 2 in the world, the world number 2 even. This is a nice bit of revenge. 1 and 2. Sabalenka's on form. Probably looking like the favourite, Nick, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't sure how Sabalenka would be post US Open, but she's bounced back and she loves it in Asia. Obviously, she broke through in Asia, started winning titles very early in her career in 2018, 2019 at this level. I think she's just shown she's the overwhelming title favourite here, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Seeing my fave, Samsonova, was able to beat Alicia Parks as well.
Yeah, because Samsonova was having a patchy time.
Again, kind of similar to Krejcikova. Obviously, she made the final of.
Yes.
Was she in the final?
Canada.
Canada, of course. Yes. Sorry.
Tournaments
blending into one. Yeah. So that was obviously a big result as well. She did kind of find a wee bit of form there. I still am. Are we going to do the Samsonova chat? I'm still pretty big on Samsonova. I still
think you should be.
Yeah, I'm not coming down. Like, I'll stand my ground. I think she's going to do something in the next 52 weeks. She's just got such a big game. It's like,
yeah, I think so too. Like, you don't win Berlin in the way she did in 2022. Or no, 21. Without nothing being there, you don't win. You don't get to the final in Canada the way she did.
Big players that week. I mean, it was good, very, very strong run.
Like, on her, she has a good week. She's unstoppable. She's brilliant. I rate Samsonova maybe not as highly as you, but I think she is I would not be surprised with her winning a big title at all.
Yeah. And I felt like that for a little while, but I think I'm starting to feel a little bit crazy, and I feel like I've been on her for quite a while now. So I'll stick, but it's going to get crazier and crazier.
Let's see what happens. She's got to get through Kvitova next, which actually, let's face it, Kvitova is, you never know what you're going to get. But I could see, yeah, she's got a tough section. She might have to go through Jabeur and Pegula to get to the semis, but you know, these kind of conditions help her.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. She's also secretly like one of the fittest players on tour for sure. Like everything I've seen from behind the scenes and stuff, But then I'm sure most of them are like that. To be fair, but I more mean she's pretty well equipped to deal with the heat when other players are quite prone to wilting, which is actually a big benefit. You know, there's not many players who can handle the heat literally, as well as Samsonova. So maybe I'm getting very big on her this week, Nick. Go on. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Like, I think you should be big on her. Have you seen, by the way, the net cord that happened in the Ivelisse Yelena Ostapenko match?
Yeah, I have.
That was.
It could only happen to Ostapenko as well, right? It's like
that was going out, and
it was going a mile out. It was like almost on like the doubles tramline line, right? It was like really, really far away from the line. Yeah, it's very funny, and it's such a typical Ostapenko reaction, right? So look at
why is life so unfair?
I know, yeah.
It does feel like that's what she thinks. It's like, why is life so unfair?
I know, yeah.
Why am I not winning every point? But
that gif of the umpire showing Ostapenko how far out the ball was. Have you seen that before, Nick?
I think I have, yeah.
You must. You will have. I'm not just describing it particularly well, but it's very funny. It's very funny.
I remember. I think I don't know if I've told the story on the stream before. When I was at Birmingham, and I was watching the final, Ostapenko Krejcikova, and I was sat next to the partner of one of the line judges, and she's not an Ostapenko fan because of her attitude towards calls and line judges and whatnot. And she, I remember, that this person was, not supporting any Ostapenko winners whatsoever. Did concede that Ostapenko did behave herself a bit in that match, but and didn't argue with their partner, which I think was probably what she was mainly worried about.
Yeah, geez, yeah, fair. I mean, Ostapenko's pretty line umpirist, so I think that's fair enough to be against her.
Apparently, I need to stop talking about Birmingham. So I will do as I'm told. But there's still some really, really good matches. It's just, I'm cursing the time zone at the minute with Beijing.
But it's all catch up
with us, so it's their turn.
It's all catch up for me, Nick. Yeah, so no live tennis really, but if the match is worth tuning into, I'll get it on. Certainly, Kvitova, Samsonova could have some good results or some highlights. I will say, if we're talking about players who struggle in the heat, Kvitova's not the greatest, to be honest. So maybe that'll be a damp squib. Ostapenko, Noskova, obviously, we were talking about that. Plenty of firepower promise there. I'm not sure how big we should be on Fruhvirtova at the moment. Sakari Fruhvirtova might not give the fireworks. Depends how both players are feeling, to be fair. We'll see, Nick.
Yeah. Fruhvirtova is one of those players I'm struggling to kind of place at the minute. Because obviously she impressed a lot over the last, so winning the title last year. And I can't remember, I think she got a decent result at one point as well. I think, was it this year she got to the Indian Wells fourth round, or was it last year?
No, okay. You know, it was. Sorry, it was this year. Yeah.
It was this year. Like, she's getting some good results, but I can't. Whenever I've watched her, I can't work out how big her game is, because she doesn't seem like that big a hitter. But then you actually watch her and like, oh, maybe she is.
Yeah. Bit tough to suss. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Anybody else you're big on this week? Are you feeling like?
Well, I was big on Pegula until she lost to Kudermetova. But again, Pegula always bounces back, so I'm still going to back her to have a decent result. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I was a little. I think I'm interested to see how Coco Gauff does. This is obviously her first match post US Open. Alexandrova is a tough draw. That's going to depend on which Alexandrova turns up.
It's still a little bit, it's almost an understatement. So as hard as it could have been, there's not many unseeded players that get harder than Alexandrova, I would say. Yeah, it's literally about those two, right? There's a bit. I would say that's the toss-up between those two. Maybe. No, honestly, I'm looking at the rest of the draw. I would say those two are the hardest. So she's got pretty unlucky there.
And they both ended up playing drawn with top players.
I know, yeah. So pretty rough for sure. Maybe would have said Vekic before she lost last week in emphatic fashion.
Yeah, it's weird since we started getting big on Vekic, she's not done as well.
Yeah, she kind
of need to calm the hype down for her to find herself again.
I think so. Yeah, she's went off the boil. Everybody was big on her at Wimbledon, but I suppose she lost the eventual champion. So maybe she.
Well, that Berlin run.
Yeah. I think that's what everybody was pretty high on, right? So, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, Jean is saying that Alexandrova beat Coco 6-4, 6-love in Berlin. I would say, although they are similar faster conditions, it was a different Gauff, and also even a fast hard court does behave differently to grass.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm being distracted by John's question there. Sorry, Nick. Just any thoughts on the coach of Qin Wen going to Osaka?
Not surprised. Not because anything to do with Zhang at all. I think she seems a perfectly pleasant person, but obviously Wim Fissette has got this loyalty to Naomi Osaka. The only reason he wasn't coaching her because he wasn't playing. So maybe it's a little bit of a slap in the face for Zhang Qinwen, who maybe was hoping for a more long-term relationship. But I think Naomi Osaka is probably going to want some familiarity when she hits the tour. So it doesn't surprise me from anyone involved. I just hope that Zhang finds a coach who can continue to get the best out of her.
I think it's almost like I was originally like, oh, maybe there's some money involved, but actually it's probably definitely not that, because he'll move, he might not even be getting as much money. You don't know. The point is, coaches have got to go with people that they have a bit of a connection with, that they can speak to. So it's not all about just like, oh, you got to do this with your forehand, this with your backhand, especially at that level. Everybody knows how to play tennis. So there's a lot more at stake, especially with a player like Naomi Osaka, who probably isn't looking for somebody to tell her, do this and that in the court. It's probably more about everything else this is going on, right? She just needs somebody she can bounce off, and obviously if she's been dealing with depression off the court, coming back into the scene is probably quite likely she absolutely needs the right people around her. So I'm sure there was a lot of stuff said between her and Wim Fissette before he made the move, and eventually that seemed like the natural choice. I don't think there's... I was just surprised that Qin Wen was so shot down by it, I guess, but maybe there was a bit of lost in translation there. Maybe it all kind of happened so quickly, and from what I've seen, Wim Fissette's a nice guy. So obviously at the end of the day it is a business, but also if it makes sense to go with Naomi Osaka because you click, then just do that. I don't think there's much more to it, Nick. Definitely.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's not really touched into it. Zhang has clearly taken some of it the wrong way, but we've seen, and you're absolutely right. It's less about it's about having a great rapport. I mean, look at Tom Hill stayed with Maria Sakkari for so long, and he continues to get the best out of her because of they get on and they trust each other. And same thing seems to be developing with Gauff and Gilbert at the minute, given the way she's been talking about him in press.
Yeah,
I think that's that is what you need. It's less about that. So we'll see how it goes. But I think that's all the tennis that we can talk for the minute. So thanks for coming on at the Slate Hour, Jack. Really appreciate talking WTA Weekly with you. And I'm excited to see. I think we're both excited to see what happens with Beijing the rest of this week.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Nick. And the lineup's fantastic. So I'm pretty excited too. Should be good.
All right. Well, let us know what you think about The tour, I'll be back to next week to kind of run down the other big results that's happened sort of after the first round, and maybe who even won the tournament in Beijing. But we will keep your eyes peeled for ATP Weekly, which will be going out after the finals this week in Astana, and the other place, which I've forgotten. But I don't follow that tour very closely, so we're okay. But yeah, keep an eye out for Mary and Damien show on Tuesday. And I will see you next week. But until then, keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.